CNBC TV 18 Weekender.
So give us a little anecdotal information. How often, for example, do you come to the facility when the US FDA inspectors are here? I'm sure they walk down the same corridors, but how long does it take?
So you should check with my colleagues. When there is a US FDA inspection, I don't come at all. I think we have a fantastic team who will deliver that result. And me coming is not going to make a difference. But I spend significant time at plants. I've seen this plant being built brick by brick. Right, so I have a lot of connects with manufacturing, and I think we get a lot of feedback from plants on how our products are behaving, how the organization is behaving. So I do come, I've spent significant time here in this facility in the last 1 year. We are now working on a new compliance culture. It's again very high tech, and if you have time I'll show you how we work. We have a dedicated in-house app which electronically delivers daily doses of compliance. So we do a lot of things just trying to disrupt the thinking on why we believe at Strides that we are only good as our next success. We may be a very successful company from a lot of perspectives, like we bought companies and sold companies and gave away dividends and all of that, but we are only good as what you do next. That's something we are grounded with.
You're as good as your next inspection.
Absolutely. So, and this is very important because even the inspectors tell you that, when we come here for 5 days and we expect you to be like that for the rest of the 2 years when we don't come. And I think you have to, it's a custodial value, and I think we take that very seriously.
But what's wrong with the industry? I mean, we've gone through a little bit of a bad phase at this point in time in terms of the US FDA, but it seems to be turning around a little bit now. Your sense in terms of why we've gone through this hump at all when it comes to compliance?
The story behind the shift is also the shift in the regulators' inspection strategy. 10 years ago, an inspector would come and look at how your processes are, how your practices are, and probably interview and meet with 5 or 6 of your top executives. That's changed to going more into details, like talking to operators, talking to the shop floor. And then we see the gap between leadership and translation to the shop floor is so dramatic that even if you display a high level of compliance and you want everybody to be compliant, the culture, the Indian pharmaceutical industry culture is all about trying to do things differently. And you see, when the business is regulated, you tend to only follow what the regulators want. But when you make pharmaceuticals, you have to go even beyond that. You have to go, and so our quality of investigation, our technical writing skills, our communication, and it's very good at the top level, but when you go down, we see big challenges. Because we think in vernacular, we speak in English, converting vernacular, it's terrible in terms of skill sets. So I think when
there has to be a cultural change which has to
and the translation also, that even if you want to change, first you as a leader need to accept that you need to change, and then you need to translate that across your organization. And here in companies like ours who have not got any FDA impacts for the last 15 years, my employees will come and ask me, why do you want to do all this? What's wrong? So that's when I keep telling them that you're only good till your next inspection or only good to your next success. And we are seeing that dramatic shift. And I think the industry has not yet fully embraced the need for us to spend more time with our people, and rather than just putting up new factories and developing more and more ANDAs and filing. Do we have the back end to support the front end we are building? I think we do not have the capability as yet. We don't have the right skills for it. But I think, like you rightly said, Ekta, is that it's moving towards, the needle is moving for the better. I think the worst is now, the negativity of the industry are events that occurred in 2010 and 11. It's not today's issues. You don't see so many big issues today. And you can see the needles moving towards the, and I think that finally the Indian industry is collaborating. The top companies are talking to each other, working together, creating, informal.
So we're probably getting over that hump. Largely, most companies are okay, and some companies will face.
And I think that it's not only the challenges of consolidation that is occurring in the US, but the consolidation here in India has to happen. because you cannot be a small player anymore and operate at this high level of compliance because it's expensive. So unless you have big size, you can't actually be successful in this business.
What would be an example of an observation?
For example, simple things like somebody is not properly gowned, okay, simple things, or not writing data contemporaneously. That means as it happens, right? So typically, for us Indians, we know we did something at 3 o'clock. Agencies expect you to write it at 3 o'clock, and we end up writing at 5.
Oh,
but
is that what the
that's one of the key culture
is?
issues, because it's like that chalta hai kind of approach. Now in our new electronic system, nobody has to write anything. It'll automatically calculate at what time was it. So this is the Cymatics. It's one of the few. It's highly automated. It's completely sorts machines. As you can see, there's just one person loading there, and there's no human intervention. The whole machine is highly automated, and it's very state of art. So the idea is, obviously we have spent significantly more money on capex upfront. There's a saying at Strides that you build the Taj Mahals and then you wait for the tourists. So it takes time in our businesses, high capex, high gestation. But patience pays, it takes time, and we approach our investors also like that. We tell investors that you need a 4 to 5 year view on the company, and if you don't have it, you'll never make money with us.
Why does it take so long for an Indian company to solve observations?
So there are two types of observations. Okay, if you get a 483 which is to do with data integrity, then you have lost the trust of the agencies, right? That's when they ask you for remediation. They ask you to bring in an external third-party consultant to oversee the process because they don't believe you. That is very hard to crack. But when you're getting a 483 for, let's say, a skill or an equipment not great, that is a correctable.
Or a gown not clear.
Yeah, those are correctable, right? So those are easy for you to address. I can have a 483 with 8 observations, and that will be less potent than one observation which is talking about data integrity.
Industry has seen a lot of EIRs, establishment inspection reports, but still there's no clearance of the facility. How do you interpret an EIR or an establishment inspection report?
So, for example, in an EIR basically concludes that the inspection went well and you are met with everything else. Typically, if your dossier is good, you should start getting approvals. But you may have a great inspection, but your product dossier may not be good. So that's why probably product delays are coming in. So,
but there are some where the EIR is received but a warning letter is outstanding, or an EIR has been received but with observations.
Let's say that one plant in the group is great and there are 6 other plants which are difficult, or 2 other plants which are difficult. They tend to be sure that the company has got a common behavior. So one plant is cleared, but from an FTS perspective, guys, listen, you still have corporate challenges. Go fix them. So it's when you don't get product approvals, it's a huge financial incentive for you to get things done quickly.
Right.
So it's also a strategy. I would like to believe that's done quite well.
Just before we take a break now, one quick last question. Are we better than China, at least when it comes to US FDA issues? Because every time I open the US FDA warning letter page, I'm flooded almost by Chinese warning letters or China companies in focus now. How do we stand compared to them?
So I don't think it's fair to compare a country behaviors, but I think China has larger challenges when it comes to compliance. And the reason why I'm saying this is that if you look at India, because of the companies that are operating in the US markets, there's a lot more global exposure. We are a very big part of the supply chain when it comes to generic pharmaceuticals, right? Whereas China is only a part of the API supply chain. They are not yet an important part of the formulation supply chain. So they form a part of the low end of the supply chain, right? So they do not have global exposure like most Indian companies have. We actually are a very big provider of finished pharmaceuticals in several countries, not only the US. Whereas China is not. I mean, it may be maybe 2 or 3% of what we do. I don't believe that they have that global exposure of compliance, and therefore what behaviors needs to be created. And it's a very inward-looking economy. So basically, they tend to do things what is important for China. And, it's because they are competitive and cheap, they also try and export. My personal take is that they are several years behind us. Several years behind us.
CNBC TV 18 Weekender.